I welcome Sneha to the class. She is a new student here. Now, before we start the class of the day, I would like to discuss some of the answers which Diksha has sent me for the last the class that we had taken on capital structure. I had given you some homework and I've received only one response from Diksha so far. So let me first discuss because she's done a very good work. Just wait for me a second and I'll be just uploading the PPT also in the meanwhile. Yeah. So the questions that I had given for homework were not many, but she has been able to do lots of questions on various questions which I had discussed, and I had left it for yourself. With this question which she has picked up from December 2015 new syllabus. Okay, I'll just open up the question paper first. New syllabus December 15. Okay. This is question number 3B that she has picked up. Right, Diksha? So let me first open up that question. Alternative question 3B, I think. It's... Just a second, I'll be opening the... Yeah. This was the question. From the following given operating data, calculate the degree of operating leverage of the two companies, where the sales, variable expenses and fixed costs were given to you, and also state which company has got a greater business risk and why. As I discussed with you in the last class, in order to find out operating leverage, you have to use the formula of contribution divided by who will tell me? Contribution has to be divided by what? Come on. Contribution divided by EBIT, right? If you remember it exactly. So she has been able to do this question where the data was given to you of sales and variable cost was given to you. So you were able to calculate contribution, less fixed cost, and you get EBIT out of it. And you have to simply apply the formula of operating leverage is equals to contribution upon EBIT. In the first case, it is coming as 1.71 times. In the second case, it is 2.33 times. But you were also required to interpret your results. And she's given a very beautiful interpretation where she says that because in case of if we are comparing the operating leverages of two companies, since XYZ has got a higher operating leverage, it has got a greater business risk as compared to ABC Limited. Because in this case here, because XYZ has got a higher operating leverage, and it has got a higher operating leverage because it has got a higher fixed cost, and therefore it has got a higher operating risk as well. Right. So that is what she has been able to explain, and I really liked her answer, so I thought that I must discuss it with and I must present it to all of you. Now further she also had certain queries, and she has also done question from the old syllabus where I would just like to show you the question, but her answer is not correct. So we can try to solve out that question also. Yeah, so that was which question? Question number 3C, okay. Yes. Diksha, are you there? Are you able to hear me? Right. The question was, Bling Limited has supplied the following data. Operating leverage 2.5, financial leverage 3, EPS of 30, market price per share of 225, capital 20,000 shares. It is proposed to raise a loan of rupees 50 lakhs at 18% for expansion. After expansion, sales will increase by 25% and fixed cost by 3 lakhs. You are required to work out the market price per share after expansion, assuming tax rate to be 50%. You remember this question, Diksha? Now, I was surprised to see your answer in this question. Why I'm saying surprised is, initially you took the operating leverage and you had the EPS, you've seen the financial leverage, and the market price per share is also there with you. So with the help of market price per share and earning per share, you have been able to calculate the price earning ratio of 7.5. That is perfect. Now you've got the number of shares which has been given to you in the question, and proposed loan has also been given to you. Now calculation of EBIT if EPS is rupees 30 and you are taking interest as 0. This is something which I've not been able to understand. If a company has got a financial leverage of 3, how can there be interest of 0? Are you able to follow? If you've got a financial leverage of 3, that means the company has got some interest to pay. Isn't it? So in this particular case, financial interest cannot be 0. Got my point? Right? So, yeah, you made a mistake there. And that is where, and then if you follow like that, because EBIT calculation is wrong, so your calculation for other aspects also become wrong. So that question you need to redo. And here, when you have to find out EBIT, you should use the degree of financial leverage. You should use the degree of financial leverage here. Why I'm saying this? Because you have got earnings before taxes. In this particular question, you were able to calculate, okay. See, when you have got EPS, then multiply the earning per share with the number of shares and you get earnings after taxes, right? Once you have got earnings after taxes, then you can find out EBIT by using the financial leverage, right? So please redo this question and try to send it back to me. Your other questions I have seen to some extent because there were too many. So I haven't seen each and every question in greater detail. But some of them have been really, whatever I saw, the concept wise it is going very well. But because as I said, there were too many of solutions, so I haven't actually seen all of them. So those which I really, tested, there I have brought my comments to you. Now any questions on capital structure, the topic that we discussed in the last class? Ma'am, there was a couple of questions in the PPT I wanted some help with. Okay, so do you want me to load the PPT again? Yeah, please tell me the slide number so that we can first sort out the queries and then we move to the next topic. Was it from leverage analysis you had the questions or from the basic capital structure? I've added all the slides. Slide number 43 of leverage analysis. Okay, so we go to that. A new project under consideration by your company requires a capital investment of rupees 150 lakhs. Is it this one? Interest on term loan is 12% and tax rate is 50%. If the debt equity ratio insisted by financing agencies is 2:1, what is the point of indifference? Okay. Now this is not a complete question because you need to have two alternatives to find out the point of indifference. Right? So as the two alternatives are not there, so this question is incomplete. Here you can assume, in a question which is incomplete, don't leave it as it is. Here you can assume that in one situation we take complete equity. In another situation we take a debt equity ratio of 2:1. And then try to find out the point of indifference. Got my point? So, because the question itself is not complete, so you can take an assumption and go ahead with the question. Yeah, Diksha, anything else? Also, slide number 41. A company is considering two financial alternatives to finance its expansion plan of rupees 1 crore. First alternative by issue of equity shares at rupees 1250. Second alternative by issue of 14% debentures. Tax to be considered at 40%. Okay. Its present capital structure consists of 20 lakhs equity shares and 8% debentures. Expected price earning ratio in the first alternative is 14 and second alternative is 12. You are required to calculate the indifference point at which the market price of the share under both the alternatives will be same. Okay, so what is the question? What is the doubt? See, market price under both the alternatives will be same if the EPS is same. Because the price earning ratio is generally constant. Right? So the question has been structured in a new language, but it's just the old wine in the new bottle. So you have to do the indifference point analysis only and try to find out the two alternate, the point of indifference where the EPS in both the situations is going to be the same. Because if EPS is going to be the same, the market price of the company's share is also going to be same. Of course. See, the price earning ratio remains constant because whether you take first alternative or second alternative, the price earning ratio is going to remain constant. Right? Anything else? Anybody else who's got any other queries? So as no more doubts are there, so I am closing these PPTs and I am starting with the next topic, which is cost of capital, right? So I really liked that, Diksha, you have been able to do your homework properly and you've been able to come up with your queries, because it is very important to do the self-study and then come out with queries so that I also come to know where exactly the students are facing difficulties. Now today we are going to start a topic, cost of capital, one of the most easiest of all topics. Why it is, and the best part about this particular topic is that every year in the examination, you are getting questions out of this topic, right? It is the simplest, most scoring. So there is no scope for any mistake in this particular chapter because it is a full shot. Like in all situations, you can score full marks in this particular chapter. So do it thoroughly. And it's the easiest of all the chapters and it is the backbone of all the chapters because cost of capital is required when you are doing discounting for present value in capital structure decision. You required cost of capital. When you were doing the capital structure decision, there also, you had to, know the cost of capital. When you were doing the dividend decision, when you will be doing the dividend decision, there also you would be needing the cost of capital. When you will be doing security analysis, there also you would be needing cost of capital. So it is the backbone of financial management and therefore a very, very important topic and most simplest, I must say. So what is this cost of capital? See, when we talk about cost of capital, we are talking about the required rate of return. That means that if you decide to invest in a particular project, you would be borrowing money or you would be arranging funds at a particular cost. So you need to earn at least that much so that you are able to recover the cost. Even if you don't add any value to the shareholders, you are still able to be in a no profit, no loss situation. So therefore you need to know what is your cost. So this is also called the required rate of return. It is also called the hurdle rate. Why it is called the hurdle rate? Because this is the hurdle that you must cross in order to get the profitability. That is why, and because it is also called the minimum acceptable rate of return. So it is the minimum, because below this, the company would be making losses. So this is the cost of capital, which is something which is the basic return that we want so that we are at a no profit, no loss situation. If an investment does not cover the cost of capital, then it will reduce the shareholders' wealth. And our objective is to maximize the shareholders' wealth. So in case we want to add value to the shareholders, we have to earn above the cost of capital, right? Because if supposing you borrowed money at 10%, and you are earning 7%. So that means every year you are bringing 3% of loss to the shareholders' value. So therefore, this is the basic that you have to get. In order to understand this appropriate hurdle rate, let us try to understand that the managers, let's take an example here. Supposing there's a company called Rocky Mountain Motors, and the managers of this company, they are intending to purchase a new tract of land, a new piece of land. Now, the purchase price of this piece of land is $10,000. Currently, the company's capital structure is made up of 40% debt, 10% preference shares and 50% equity. You have got 50% equity, 40% debt and 10% preference shares. Now, the company considers this capital structure to be optimal, and in case we want to increase the capital, we would be going by the same ratio. Now, if the company has to take a decision, it has to first find out what is my cost of capital. Because if this particular new tract of land is going to give me a return which is more than this cost of capital, then only we will be going ahead with this kind of a proportion. So today we are going to find out, we are going to decide what is that hurdle rate, what is that discounting rate, what is the minimum acceptable rate of return, what is the hurdle rate. These are the names of the same concept. These are the names of the same concept which is vaguely called the cost of capital. So what is the importance of this? As I've already discussed, this is the minimum required rate of return for any company. If we want an investment to be worthwhile, its return must be more than the cost of capital, right? And therefore, at times, we have to look at two different investment proposals, right? So if we have the same level of risk, if we have got the same level of cost, we would be looking at two different investment proposals. Any particular investment which is going to give us the better return, we would be accepting that. Now, when we talk about cost of capital, you have seen that, there's a cost of debt, there's a cost of equity, there's a cost of preference shares. But many a times, there are certain costs which are hidden cost, which are implicit cost. What are those costs? See, supposing you are having a business, and in that particular business, you earn certain profits in a particular year, and you decided to retain those profits with yourself. You decided to retain those profits with yourself so that you invest it into new projects. Now, that money which you've retained with yourself, that has got an implicit cost. What is that implicit cost? It's the cost that the shareholders or the owners of the business would have earned, a return that the owners of the business would have earned had they invested this money somewhere else. So it is the opportunity cost of capital, the implicit cost, which has not been expressly written anywhere. It has not been expressly decided or agreed in any particular agreement. But still there's a cost, because you have to meet the expectations of your shareholders, right? And explicit cost is the cost which is clearly mentioned. When you borrow from a bank or when you issue debentures, the rate of interest is very clearly mentioned. That's the explicit cost. Implicit cost is the cost which is not clearly mentioned, but it is the expectation of the shareholders. So implicit cost is the cost which is not reported separately, as against explicit cost, which represents clear, obvious cash flows from business and reduce the bottom line profitability. But explicit cost is the cost which is very clearly mentioned in the agreement, which the company pays to procure any kind of financing. Implicit cost is the opportunity cost, which is associated with the best alternative investment opportunity for the firm and its shareholders that will be foregone if the projects presently under consideration by the firm were accepted. That means that it's an opportunity cost. If I would not have kept my money with this company, I would have invested it somewhere else, and that is called the opportunity cost of capital. That's what's the implicit cost. In the examination, you have got the questions like distinguish between implicit cost and explicit cost, which I would be discussing with you later also. And implicit cost is something on which, theory questions have been coming in the examination. Another way of distinguishing the costs of capital can be from the factors which affect the cost of capital, because there can be certain factors which are controllable in nature. Certain factors are there which you cannot control. What you can control is your capital structure policy, because your capital structure policy will decide your weighted average cost of capital. Because as we discussed in the capital structure chapter, I told you that if you take debt, because debt is a tax deductible expense, interest is a tax deductible expense, so you can reduce your overall cost of capital by increasing debt in your capital structure. So That's a controllable factor. Your capital structure is in your hands. Dividend policy is in your hands. Investment policy is in your hands. But the market rate of interest is not in your hand. You cannot control that. Similarly, the rate of tax is not in your hand. So these are some factors you can definitely control when you want to decide your cost of capital, but there would be certain factors which would be beyond your control, and you will have to work upon your cost of capital or your capital structure accordingly. Now, when we discuss about cost of capital, particularly when we are talking about the equity cost of capital, because the cost of debt and the cost of preference is explicitly mentioned. But when we talk about the cost of equity is not mentioned. Otherwise also, when we talk about any cost, if I have to borrow money from somebody, what will decide my rate of interest? Because when you go to a bank, the bank just does not charge the same rate of interest from all its borrowers, right? It may charge maybe 10% from one borrower and 10.5% from another borrower and 11% from the third borrower. What are the considerations for this differentiation? See, when the bank has to expect a return from a particular borrower, there are three things that bank considers. One is the risk-free rate of interest. That's the minimum that the bank is going to charge from anybody. Second is the business risk. That what is the purpose for which you are taking this loan and where are you going to invest this money? If that particular business or if that particular investment has got a higher risk, bank will expect a higher return. When you go for a housing loan, the bank charges a lower rate of interest. But when you go for a personal loan, bank charges a higher rate of interest, right? So the risk of that particular business, that will decide the rate of interest. And third is the financial risk. What is your current level of indebtedness? How much financial risk you've already taken, that will also decide your rate of interest. So there are three factors which will definitely impact the cost of capital, the cost of debt, or the cost of equity for that matter. That is, first is the risk-free rate of return. Second is the business risk in a particular company. And third is the financial risk in a particular company. All three will go together to make the expected cost of any particular debt or capital instrument. So now we were talking about the importance of cost of capital. From there we move to how do we calculate this cost of capital, because capital can be collected, or the capital can be contributed by various sources. Equity, debt, preference shares. These are the three major sources of capital, and each one of them will have their own cost. There will be a cost of equity, there would be a cost of debt, and there would be a cost of preference shares. Now what we do, in order to find out the hurdle rate, we have to find out the weighted average cost of capital. But before we find out the weighted average cost of capital, we have to find out the individual costs of various sources of capital, right? So we will first find out the individual cost, and then we will multiply the individual cost with their weights in the capital. So first of all, let us find out the cost of debt. Now, to the debenture holders or to the bankers, what do you pay? What do you pay to the bankers or to the debenture holders? Yeah, anybody? What do you pay to the bank? Interest, right? Very good. So the cost of debt is interest that you pay, the rate of interest that you pay. But as we discussed in the last class, we said that interest is a tax deductible expense. We also discussed about the Modigliani-Miller approach, where they said that yes, because of tax deductibility, the cost of debt gets reduced. So in order to find out the cost of debt, what we should say, the cost of debt is equals to the rate of interest multiplied by 1 minus tax rate. Multiplied by 1 minus tax rate. For example, if I say that you are, the example is here only. If I say that a particular person who has got a tax rate of 34%, he pays interest of rupees 100. Then actually his cash outflow is just rupees 66. As I discussed with you earlier also in the classes, why is it so? Because supposing this person has got an income of rupees 200, he pays interest of rupees 100, so his earnings before taxes is rupees 100. Now supposing he's got a tax rate of 34%, so what he will do, he will pay 34 rupees as taxes, and his income after taxes is 66 rupees. His income after taxes is 66 rupees. Now, so actually now supposing this interest would not have been there. His income would have been just 200 rupees. So in that situation, because there was no interest, so his earnings before taxes would also have been 200 rupees. He would not have paid, and he would not have paid any interest. So he would have to pay a tax of rupees 68, right? And his earnings after taxes would be rupees 132. Now what are we trying to say? We are trying to say that because he paid interest, he paid 34 rupees less as taxes. Because he has paid interest, you can see in the first case, because he has paid 100 rupees of interest, so he has paid tax of only 34 rupees. So his net outflow, because he has got a profit at one side, he is paying lesser amount of tax. So his net outflow because of this interest has been rupees 66 only, because 34 rupees he has been able to save. So in order to find out the cost of debt, what we do, we multiply interest with 1 minus tax rate, because his actual cash outflow is 100 minus 34, and in order to find out this 100 minus 34, we can also write it as 100 multiplied by 1 minus tax rate, right? So that would also make it 68 only. That would also make it 68 only. So there 66 only rather, right? So that is about cost of debt. Now coming to cost of preference shares. Preference shareholders, you pay them dividends at a fixed rate, and that dividend is not tax deductible. Rather, nowadays you have to pay dividend distribution tax on the preference shares, right? You have to pay dividend distribution tax, which is an additional cost of preference shares, right? So in order to find out the cost of preference shares, you will simply write it as dividend divided by the value of preference shares. So if I've got a preference share of rupees 100 and the preference dividend is 12%, then the cost of preference shares or the cost of preferred equity would be 12%. It is not a tax deductible expense, so there's going to be no tax adjustment for the cost of preference shares, right? Is it clear the difference between preference shares and the cost of preference shares and cost of debt? Is the difference clear to everybody? Okay. Now coming to the cost of equity, which is something where we need to spend some time, because cost of debt and cost of preference shares is not a very difficult issue. In case of cost of common equity, there are different approaches to find out cost of equity, because it is not an explicit cost. It is not clearly mentioned. We have to find out this cost, right? When we issue equity shares, we do not assure any return on that equity share. So how do we find out the cost of equity? There are three approaches which I'm going to discuss with you, and one more approach which I would be just taking it as a part of practical questions with you. So we would be discussing about CAPM model, we would be discussing about bond yield plus risk premium approach, and we would be discussing about dividend growth model approach. Starting with CAPM, it is called capital asset pricing model. A very important aspect for your examination, because you would be getting questions on CAPM either as a short note or as a practical question, either in cost of capital or in security analysis. Somewhere or the other you would be getting a question on CAPM. What is this capital asset pricing model? Capital asset pricing model tries to find out the cost of equity, right? Now, as per this particular model, we say that cost of equity, which I would be discussing with you later also when I discuss security analysis, cost of equity is equals to risk-free rate plus beta multiplied by return on market minus risk-free rate. Now, what is this, and how are we trying to find out the cost of equity? See, what are you going to give to your equity shareholders? You would give them at least the risk-free rate, which anybody would give even to the bond, to the government securities or to the treasury bills. The rate which is given is called the risk-free rate. So you would give to your equity shareholders at least the risk-free rate. and then you would be giving them some premium for taking the risk in your company, right? Some market risk premium that you would be giving. So that you can say this premium can be calculated as return on market. What is this market here? I'll be explaining it to you. Minus risk-free rate. What I mean to say by that, see, when we talk about equity market, when we talk about capital market, because this is an investment that you have done in the capital market, so the BSE Sensex or the Nifty is the market indicator. So if anybody would have invested in BSE Sensex or in Nifty, what is the return that he would have got? Right? Right? Minus the risk-free rate. That is the return, that is the risk premium that you should get, because you have not invested in government securities, you have invested in capital market. So you should be getting the premium, right? Return on market minus the risk-free rate. But you would say that all the companies would not give the same return as is the return on the market. All the companies do not give you the return as the BSE Sensex increases. That does not mean the return on all the companies is going to increase. Every company will have its different sensitivity. Every company will have a different sensitivity with the market index. There would be companies which will give double the return as the market. There would be companies which would be giving half the return as the market. There would be companies which would be giving equal the return as the market. So these companies will have a different correlation with the capital market, but somewhere or the other they're going to be related with the return on market, because if the capital market increases, then it impacts all the companies in the same way, right? In some cases it is more, in some cases it is less, but it does impact, right? So this sensitivity of a company to the changes in the capital market is measured by beta. So, and this, how do we calculate beta? This I would be discussing with you when I discuss security analysis with you. Right now, for your understanding, for the purpose of calculating the cost of equity, you have to place a formula which has been given in capital asset pricing model. It says that because you are trying to price the value of a capital asset. What are you trying to do? You are trying to decide the price of a capital asset. Right? So, in order to find out the price of a capital asset, we use the capital asset pricing model, which says that in order to price an equity share, you should get the risk-free rate plus beta multiplied by return on market minus risk-free rate. This is the formula which has been given in the capital asset pricing model. Right? So, here KE is cost of equity, RF is risk-free rate, RM is the equity market required return or the expected return on the market portfolio, and B is beta. Beta is also called the systematic risk coefficient. Now, why is it called a systematic risk coefficient? Because in a market, you've got two kinds of risk. When you invest in any particular company shares, you've got two kinds of risks. They are called systematic risk and unsystematic risk. Now, what do I mean to say, and what is the difference between the two? See, if you have a company, if you have a business, then you will have to face some risk because you are in the system. If I have a company in India, then there would be certain factors which will impact all the countries in India. Supposing India enters into a war with Pakistan, or in case there is any political uncertainty in the country, or maybe, there is some natural disaster in the country, or any kind of an issue which impacts all the companies altogether, is called a systematic risk. Right? And market index is also decided by the systematic risk, because all the companies, they come together. Second is the unsystematic risk. Unsystematic risk is there because though you are in a system, but you are still an individual company. And because you are an individual company, you will have your own business risk and you will have your own financial risk. That is called an unsystematic risk. This is because you are doing a particular business. So you might be having certain problem with your labor. You can be having problem with your vendors. You can be having problems with your own technology. That is your unsystematic risk. Risk which is related to your company itself. It can even be financial risk. So unsystematic risk is business risk or financial risk of an individual company, and systematic risk is the risk because you are in a particular system, so you are facing that kind of a risk. And beta is an indicator of a systematic risk because we are trying to correlate your company with the market index. Now, when we talk about investments, I'm just going a little, I'm just diversifying myself from the topic because I need to here explain a particular concept. See, when we talk about investments, we say that, okay, if I've got 10,000 rupees and if I have to invest it in India, now all the companies have got the same systematic risk in India, right? So what I should do to reduce my risk, I should invest in 2 companies, 3 companies, 5 companies, because at least by investing in 5 companies, I am able to reduce the unsystematic risk. You cannot avoid the systematic risk because because all the companies are in the same system. But at least you can avoid the unsystematic risk, because if one particular company would be having difficulties, the other might be having profits, and thereby ultimately you would be getting an average rate of return. So with the help of diversification, you can reduce the unsystematic risk. But systematic risk cannot be avoided. Systematic risk cannot be avoided. For that, we have to do different kind of a risk management, which I would be discussing with you in the later classes. For systematic risk, what do we need to do? Right now, I would be just going to cost of capital. So we said that in order to find out cost of equity, one way is that we use the CAPM approach and we apply this particular formula, RF plus beta multiplied by RM minus RF, to find out the cost of equity. But at times we do not, because there might be certain companies which are not listed on the stock exchange, and there, we might not be able to calculate their beta because the company is not in the stock exchange. So how do we know the sensitivity of the company to the market index? And therefore we're not able to find out their beta. So in case of those companies, how do we find out the cost of equity? For that, we have got another approach. This example I would be taking separately. So there we can find out the bond yield plus risk premium approach. That means that supposing if we have issued long-term bonds in that company, what is the yield that we are giving to the bondholders? What is the return that we are giving to the bondholders? If we are able to find out that return on the bondholders, we will simply add the additional risk which the equity holders are taking by adding a risk premium. Supposing if we are giving 10% to the bondholders, and we take that the risk premium for the equity shareholder should be 5%, so we can say the cost of equity would be 15%. But then there can be certain companies which have not even issued the bonds. There might be certain companies which have not even issued the bonds. In that situation, we can use a dividend growth model approach. What is this dividend growth model approach? It says that in order to find out the cost of equity, you can simply write D1 divided by P0. Value of common stock can also be denoted as P0. D1 divided by P0 plus G. It says what is your expected rate of return in future? What is your expected dividend in future? Not the rate of return. What is your expected dividend in the next year? Divided by the present value of the common stock plus G is the growth rate. Right? So this particular equation, how does this particular equation comes into existence? See, in certain cases, like, just a second, I said cost of equity is equals to D1 divided by P0 plus G, right? Now you would say that how did we come out with this? When you did the discounting, when you did the capital budgeting decision, in order to find out P0, what did you do? You said cash flow at year 1 divided by 1 plus R. Now what was this R? This was the cost of equity only. This was the cost of capital only, right? Plus cash flow for year 2 divided by 1 plus R raised to power 2 plus cash flow for year 3 divided by 1 plus R raised to power 3. But when we talk about cost of equity, equity holders do not invest in a company for a definite period. They invest in a company for an indefinite period. they invest in a company for an indefinite period. So therefore, we cannot have indefinite period of cash flows, and we cannot do the discounting of indefinite period of cash flows. So in order to find out the P0, what we can say is, we can simply say it to be, we can divide it as D1 divided by KE plus G. What do I mean to say by that? Dividend which I'm going to receive in the next year divided by the cost of equity plus the growth rate. That will give me the price of equity. Now in order to find out this particular cost of equity, what I have done, I have simply changed the equation, and I say KE is equals to D1 divided by P0 plus G. This gives me the cost of equity, right? Now another question that comes up, because we know now the cost of equity, we know the cost of debt, we know the cost of preference shares, but you would say that, ma'am, in certain situations, we've got the flotation costs as well. When we issue debt, when we issue equity, at that point of time, we incur certain cost. There are advertisement charges, there are brokers fees, there are listing fees that we pay. So there is a cost that we pay for this particular this particular investment that we get in our company, this particular financing that we're getting in our company. So how are we going to take into account these flotation costs while finding out the cost of debt or the cost of equity? In order to find out the cost of debt or cost of equity, simply reduce the flotation costs. So what I'm trying to say, if I have to find out the flotation, if I have to find out the cost of preference shares with flotation cost, the cost for preference share was, cost of preference shares is equals to dividend divided by value, dividend divided by the face value of the preference share. Simply write dividend divided by value minus F. F is the flotation cost here. F is the flotation cost here, right? So if you are able to get per unit of dividend divided by per unit price minus per unit flotation cost, simply you can find out. So simply you have to reduce the flotation cost. I think I have seen a question in the last examination including the flotation cost. If I'm not sure upon that, but I think there was a question. Like similarly, if I have to find out the cost of equity with flotation cost, simply use the formula D1 divided by, now again, one more thing. How do I find out D1? Because it is the dividend in the next year. Because it is the dividend in the next year. You know the dividend for the current year? If you know the dividend for the current year, multiply it with 1 plus G. Because there's going to be a growth rate. So there's going to be a growth rate in dividend also. Right? So if your current year dividend is say 7 rupees per share, and the share price was say rupees 100, so that's 7% dividend. What is going to be your next year dividend, supposing there's a growth rate of 10%? So next year the dividend would be 7 multiplied by 1.1, right? So that would be equal to 7.7 rupees. So if you have got D and if you've got the growth rate, you can find out D1, right? So D multiplied by 1 plus G, D multiplied by 1 plus G, what does it give you? It gives you D1. Is it clear? So now the question was, if I have to find out the cost of equity with the flotation cost, it is equals to D1 divided by the value of common stock, that is P0, minus F plus G. So wherever we have the flotation cost, simply reduce the flotation cost from the value to find out the cost of equity or the cost of debt after the flotation costs. Because in case of cost of debt, in case of debt issue, at times the flotation cost might be very nominal. But in case of equity issues, the flotation cost can be a sizable amount, and therefore taking into account flotation cost is something which is very, very important to find out the cost of the various elements of capital structure. Coming to the cost of retained earnings. Somebody was telling me that, you don't have to pay anything for the retained earnings. You simply can hold this money with yourself. The answer is no. Because there is an implicit cost of retained earnings. Because the shareholders might pressurize the company to pay them the dividends so that they can invest in alternative projects. So therefore, the cost of retained earnings is simply equal to the cost of equity. The cost of retained earnings is simply equal to the cost of equity. right? Never ever think that the cost of that there is no cost of retained earnings. Retained earnings have a cost. It is exactly equal to the cost of common equity, but yes, there is no flotation cost in the retained earnings, because this is the money which you have not borrowed from, or this is not the money that you have asked anybody to contribute. It's simply that you have retained it with yourself. Now, in the June 15 examination, there was a question: as there is no explicit cost of retained earnings, these funds are free of cost. Just one second. In the meanwhile, in case anybody has got any questions, you can ask me. The PPT is just getting, it's just opening. Anybody who has got any questions on the discussion that we have done so far? Cost of capital. Is it getting clear to everybody? The different elements of cost, is it clear? Just one second, I'm just opening. Yeah. So what I was trying to say over here was, I had just inserted the answers to these questions because that was not there in that particular PPT. So the question was, as there is no explicit cost of retained earnings, these funds are free of cost. The answer is the statement is false. Why the statement is false? As I've already discussed with you, that this retained earning has got an implicit cost, not an explicit cost. Retained earning is an internal source of long-term financing, and it is a part of shareholders' equity. As there is no explicit payout from retained earnings, it has been argued that there is no cost to the firm for carrying these retained earnings, because you don't have to pay dividend, neither you have to pay interest on retained earnings. However, the statement is not true. Why it is not true? Because retained earnings, they acquire the character of a perpetual capital, and therefore the return on investment of the firm is ultimately proportional to the rate of growth of retained earnings. So as you have more retained earnings, it is an expectation that you will have a higher return on investment. The capital that is reinvested in business, it has got some cost. The cost is the opportunity cost of the returns which are obtained in the similar investment elsewhere. It is the opportunity cost which is the cost of the retained earnings, right? Similarly, there was a question: distinguish between explicit cost and implicit cost. This has been asked in the last year examination, the new syllabus. What is the difference between explicit cost and the implicit cost? See, when we talk about implicit cost is not something which is reported separately, but explicit cost is very clearly, obviously determined, is very clear, and it is paid out of the profits of the business. Explicit cost is paid to procure financing, but implicit cost is the opportunity cost, right? So these were a few things which I had added in the PPT, which could not be up. Questions, anybody? Any doubts so far? Any questions, any doubts, anybody? So if you know the cost of the different elements in the cost of capital, if you know the cost of different elements in the cost of capital, then you have to find out the weighted average cost of capital, because in the capital structure in some companies you can have 2:1 ratio of debt and equity. In another company it can be 1:1. In another company there can be some portion of preference shares as well. So in order to find out the average cost of capital, because it is that R you're trying to find out, which we use for discounting in capital budgeting decision. So there we are not concerned whether you are getting the money from borrowings or you're getting the money from from equity. We are simply wanting the rate at which we can go for discounting. So in order to find out that rate, you need the weighted average cost of capital, right? Now if I ask you to recall the example which I had discussed as the first, where I said that there is a company which has got 40% of the funds from debt, right, and 10% is from the preference shares and 50% from the common shareholders, that means whatever the company will earn, 40% of that, of the required return, will go to the debenture holders, 10% would go to the preference shareholders, and the remaining amount will remain with the equity shareholders. So in order to find out weighted average cost of capital, what we have to do, we have to multiply the weight of debt with the cost of debt. We have to multiply the weight of preference share with the cost of preference share. We have to multiply the weight of common stock or the weight of equity with the cost of equity. Now the question comes, how do we find out these weights? Because we have so far calculated the KD, KP and KE. We have to now find out the weights. In order to find out the weights, we can have two ways of doing it. One is that we give the book value weights. Another, we give it a market value weight. Now you would ask me that, ma'am, how do we find out the book value or the market value rates? The example is very simple. Supposing you have a capital structure of, where you have got 5,000 rupees from equity, 2,000 rupees from debt, and 3,000 rupees from preference shares. Right? So it's very simple. In order to find out the weight, what you say, what is my total capital? The total capital is 10,000 rupees. So that means the weight of equity is 0.5 because 50% is coming from equity. So the weight of equity is 0.5. The weight of debt is 0.2 and the weight of preference shares is 0.3. Total should be equal to 1. Total should be equal to 1. So that gives me the weights. Another way of finding out weights is the market values. Now here, if you're not satisfied with the book value weights, you say, okay, let me find out the market value weights. In order to find out the market value rates, what you do, you find out the market value of equity. Assuming the market value of equity is 10,000, the market value of debt is 2,000 only, and the market value of preference shares is, say, rupees 4,000. So in that situation, your total becomes 16,000. Right? So now in order to find out the market value weights, you will say that the weight of equity is 10 by 16, whatever the value will come. The weight of equity is going to be 10 by 16. The weight of debt would be 2 by 16. And the weight of preference shares would be 4 by 16. Right? So, what we are trying to say here is, ultimately it should be 16 by 16. The total is 16 by 16, that is equals to 1. Right? So, you can take the book value weights and you can take the market value rates. Now, the question comes, which one is better? Which one is better? In order to find out the cost of, the weighted average cost of capital, definitely the market value weights is better, because book value weights, book values are historical figures and market values are the latest figures. So if you depend upon the market values, I think that would be better. But in the examination, you can get any types of questions. You may be required to calculate the book value weights, weighted average cost of capital based upon book value weights. You might even be required to ask to calculate weighted average cost of capital based upon market value rates. No problem, whichever way it is asked to you, you have to just solve the question. Now, in case you have to find out the book value weights, you just have to look at the balance sheet, because the total amount of long-term debt, the amount of preference shares and the amount of equity shares is clearly mentioned in the balance sheet, and simply add the three together and find out the weights. But in order to find out the market value weights, okay, let me first take the example of book value weights. Like we said that you have got a long-term debt of rupees 4 lakhs, preference shares of 1 lakhs and common stock of 5 lakh rupees. In that situation, simply give it the value. 4 lakhs divided by 10 lakhs is equals to 40% is the weight of long-term debt, 10% is the weight of preference shares, and 50% is the weight of common equity. For looking at the market value weights, you can simply, now assuming that the cost of debt is 7%, cost of preference shares is 10%, and cost of equity is 12%. How do we find out the market value weights? How do we find out the weighted average cost of capital? Simply multiply the cost with the weight and add the three together. So cost of debt was 7%. So that is 0.07. Cost of debt was 7%. The weight of debt was 4 lakhs divided by 10 lakhs is equals to 40%. So 40% multiplied by 7% plus the cost of debt was, the cost of preference shares is 10% and the weight of preference shares is also 10%. So 10% multiplied by 10%. The cost of equity is given to us as 12% and the weight of equity was 50%. Simply solve this equation and find out the weighted average cost of capital. In this particular case, it is 9.8%. In this particular question, it is 9.8%. So it is not very difficult, as I said. If you have to give the market value weights, because the book value weights are historical in nature, so you can find out the weighted average cost of capital based upon the market value rates. There, what you have to do, you have to find out the market value of the debt, of the preference shares and of the equity, and you just have to give the weights accordingly. Supposing, if we continue with the same question, supposing the market price of debt is 905 and you have got 400 units of debt, 400 of rupees 1000 each, but the market price is rupees 905. Simply multiply the market price with the number of units to find out the total market value of debt. Supposing you've got the preference shares of rupees, supposing the market price of preference shares is rupees 100 and you've got 1000 units of the preference share, multiply the units with the market price and you find out the total market value of the preference shares. Similarly, supposing the market value of equity shares is $70 and you've got 10,000 shares outstanding, so the total market value of equity is 7 lakh rupees. Add the three market values, which is coming as 11,62,000 rupees. Here 362 being debt, so 362 divided by 1162 is 31.15%. 1 lakh divided by 1162 is 8.61% and 7 lakhs divided by 1162 is 60.24%. Add the three together, it becomes 100%. Now simply multiply the cost with this weight now. The cost remains the same, only the weights have changed. Right? So don't get confused at whether the cost will also change. The cost has not changed, only the weights have changed. So in the case of debt, the cost was 7%. Now the weight is 31.15%, which was earlier 40%. The cost of preference shares was 10%. The weight is 8.61%. The cost of equity is 12% and the weight is 60.24%. Just multiply the cost with their respective weights, add the three together to find out the weighted average cost of capital, and you can see the weighted average cost of capital has increased from 9% to 10.27%. So increasing cost of capital, is it good or is it bad? Is it good for the company or it is bad for the company? It is bad. It is bad because the expectation of the market is increasing and the company has to perform in a better manner. It has to earn more profits, isn't it? Because the market is giving a higher cost to the company. Market has got a higher cost to the company, right? So you have to perform according to the market expectations. See, it is always advisable to calculate the market value weights also along with the book value weights. The reason is because book values are historical amounts, market values are the current amount, and many a times, there can be a dramatic difference between the two. The cost as per book values might be much less than the expectations of the market. So therefore, the company should definitely look at the market values, to look at the expectations of the various investors in the company. Now, let us look at some of the review questions. Cost of capital is used by a company as a minimum benchmark for its yield. True or false? Cost of capital is used by a company as a minimum benchmark for its yield. True or false? True. Perfect. Capital asset pricing model is a tool to work out the cost of equity. True or false? capital asset pricing model. Okay. Can anybody give me the equation for the capital asset pricing model here? Can anybody give me the equation for the capital asset pricing model? Anybody who's able to recall? It was KE is equals to RF plus, if you're able to recall, RF plus beta multiplied by RM minus RF. Perfect. Very good. So this is a tool to find out the cost of equity because the cost of equity can be found out by the risk-free rate plus the risk premium multiplied by beta, right? Comment upon the cost of retained earnings. So retained earnings, they do have a cost which is an implicit cost. Now from here I move to the practical questions. Just give me 1 second. I have to connect the charger. So you've studied the question. It is Monoplast Company Limited has a following capital structure as on 31st March 2013. Equity shares of rupees 80 lakhs. The total number of shares is 4 lakh shares. 10% preference shares and 14% debentures. Share of the company sells for rupees 20. Now the moment I get this detail, just share of the company sells for rupees 20, in order to find out the cost of equity, which particular formula do I have to use? It is expected that the company will pay next year a dividend of 2 per share, which will grow at 4% forever. Now all the more simple. Tax rate is 30%. You are required to compute the weighted average cost of capital. Dividend growth model. Perfect. So here it's a very simple question which I have picked up. You have to first find out the cost of equity. In order to find out the cost of equity, you have to use the formula D1 divided by P0 plus G. Now D1 has been given to you as 2 per share. Share price is given to you as 20 rupees. So 2 divided by 20 is 10%, which will grow at 7% forever. So the total cost of this particular company's equity shares is 17%. Roughly only I can find out. The tax rate is 30%, which will be helpful in finding out the cost of debentures. If you have to find out the weighted average cost of capital, I don't think so. It's a very difficult exercise. So in order to find out cost of equity shares, we use D1 divided by P0 plus G. So 2 divided by 20 plus 0.07 is equal to 17%. In order to find out the cost of debentures, we were given 14% as the cost, which was given to us as 14% debentures, and 1 minus tax rate. Tax rate was given to us as 30%. So 70% of 14% is equals to 9.8%. Now we have got the cost of equity. Cost of preference shares is given to us, 10% preference shares. And the cost of debt is 9.8%. Multiply it with the book value weights because market values have not been given to us. So 50% is the equity shares. 80 lakhs divided by 1 crore 60 lakhs is equals to 50% is the weight of equity shares. 20 divided by 160 is equals to 12.5% is the weight of preference shares. And 60 divided by 160, so 37.5% is the weight of debentures. Multiply the cost with the weight to find out the weighted cost and add the three together. So the weighted average cost of capital for this company is coming as 13.425%. Is coming as 13.425%. Is it clear? Can I move to the next question? Another question which I wanted to discuss with you, which I had added to the PPT, which I would like to share before I move to the next slide. It is a question that came in June 2015 examination. The question was, Apurva Limited has assets of rupees 32 lakhs that have been financed as follows. Equity shares of rupees 100 each for rupees 18 lakhs. General reserve of 3,60,000 and debt of 10,40,000. So now a new item has come in the capital structure, which is general reserve. So you have to look into it. You have been told general reserve is of the nature of what? What is general reserve? Yeah, any idea? How do we have to handle general reserve? General reserve is like retained earnings, right? So now, for the year ended 31st March 2014, the company's total profits before interest and taxes was 6,23,000. Company pays 8% interest on borrowed capital and the tax bracket is 40%. So you can find out the cost of debt. 8% multiplied by 1 minus tax rate. So 8 multiplied by 60% is equals to 4.86 or 48. So 4.8% is the after tax cost of debt. Market value of equity as on 31st March 2014 was 150 per share. From the above, determine the weighted average cost of capital using market value as weights. So the question is very tricky. The question is very tricky because you have been given some information which you are, at times not able to understand. How do we evaluate this information to find out the weighted average cost of capital? How do we evaluate this information to find out the weighted average cost of capital? Now you have to give the weighted average cost of capital using market value weights, and market value of equity has been given to you as 150 per share, right? The market value of debt, we will take it as constant only. Now first of all, you have to find out the cost of equity. In order to find out the cost of equity, what you will do, certain information has been given to you, which is company's total profit before interest and taxes is rupees 6,23,000. Use this information from this earnings before interest and taxes, reduce interest and reduce the tax, right? Reduce interest and reduce the tax. So you will get the earning per share divided by the number of shares. Are you able to follow? You will get the earning per share divided with the market price per share to find out the cost of equity here. This is because this is something which I was discussing with you. As I said, that this is not contained in the model, but the return that you're getting and the amount that you're investing gives you the cost of equity, isn't it? So the profit that you're able to get per year is earning per share divided by the number of shares, total earnings divided by the total number of shares gives you earning per share multiplied by the market price per share and divided by market price per share multiplied by 100 gives you the cost of equity here. Now you have got the cost of equity is 12% and cost of debt is 4.8%. You have to find out the weighted average cost of capital based upon market value weights, right? Now equity share capital, number of shares were given to you. Number of shares were given to you as 18,000. Number of shares were given to you as 18,000 and market price per share was rupees 150. So 18,000 multiplied by 150. What is the amount that you are getting? 18,000 multiplied by 150, you would be getting 27 lakh rupees. Now this 27 lakh rupees is the price that you are getting not only for your shares but also for your retained earnings. So this 27 lakh rupees you have to divide between your general reserve and your equity shares in the same proportion in which you had in the balance sheet in the last year. So 18 lakhs and 3,60,000 is the ratio that you are getting. So 20% and you can say so here you divide it in the ratio of 5:1. So this 27 lakh rupees also you divide in the ratio of 5:1 and you divide it into equity share capital and general reserve. The debt capital remains the same and then find out the weights. Then find out the weights and multiply the weights with the cost of capital and find out the weighted average cost of capital. You're getting my point? So it is slightly a tricky question and I thought that I should discuss it with you. The question, were you able to follow that particular question? Okay, very nice. Can I hear from Diksha and Meera also? Great. Now taking one more question here. This question came in June 2014 in the old syllabus. Worldwide Limited has the following capital structure as on 31st March 2013. Equity shares 1,50,000 shares of rupees 30 lakhs. Preference shares 10% rupees 5 lakhs and debentures 14% rupees 15 lakhs. So total capital is 50 lakh rupees. The market price of share is rupees 20 each. It is expected that the company will pay next year a dividend of rupees 2 per share, which will grow at the rate of 5% forever. The tax rate is 30%. So similar question which you had done in the earlier slide. Same kind of a question, 2 divided by 20 plus 5%. So the cost of equity would be 15% and the cost of debt would be 14% multiplied by 1 minus 30%. So you can find out the cost of debt and cost of equity. That's not at all a problem. And you can find out the weighted average cost of capital based on the existing capital structure also. Now the question goes further. It says compute the new weighted average cost of capital if the company raised an additional 10 lakh debt by issuing 15% debentures. So the tax rate is not going to change. You have got one more element in your capital structure, rupees 10 lakh debt at the rate of 15%. This would result in increasing the expected dividend per share to rupees 3 and leave the growth rate unchanged, but the price of the share will fall to rupees 15 per share. So now you will have to do the revised calculation for cost of equity as well, and then do the complete calculation again for weighted average cost of capital. Compute the cost of capital if in 2 above the growth rate increases to 10%. So again you have to find out the cost of equity and then again find out the weighted average cost of capital. So these kinds of questions are just added to give you more marks, I believe, because it's a simple question. Just you have to do a lot of calculations and you would be able to solve these questions. So the first situation, you have given the weights and you have been able to find out the weighted average cost of capital to be 12.94%. In the second situation, you have added one more element, that is 15% debentures of rupees 10 lakhs. And here your cost of equity is also changed because your D1 has increased to 3 rupees and your P0 has reduced to 15 rupees. So your cost of ordinary shares has become 25%, and that is why your weighted average cost of capital has increased to 17.53%. Now it goes further and it says that if assuming the growth rate also increases. So if the growth rate also increases, again further the cost of equity will increase, because in a higher growth rate the expectation of the shareholders also increase. So the weighted average cost of capital further increases to 20.03%. Right? So these kinds of questions are repeated calculations on the same formula. So there is nothing much to discuss on that. Another question which I would like to take up is, shares of Alpha Limited are currently being quoted at a price earning ratio of 7.5 times. Now this is an interesting question. Shares of Alpha Limited are currently being quoted at a price earning ratio of 7.5 times. Retained earnings of the company is 37.5%, is rupees 6 per share. Can you give me the earning per share? Can you give me the earning per share? Or can you give me the formula to find out the earning per share here? Retained earnings is 37.5%, is rupees 6 per share. Any idea how do we find out the earning per share? MPS divided by EPS is price earning. No, I want to know how do we calculate EPS with this given information. I have got the price earning ratio. If I want to know the market price per share, can you give me the earning per share? It's not difficult here. See, retained earnings is 37.5%. It is 37.5% of what? Retained earning is 37.5%. It is 37.5% of what? Any idea? Anybody? It is 37.5% of the total earnings. Out of the total earnings, you are retaining 37.5% and the remaining you are giving as dividend. Isn't it? What will you do with earnings? You will either give it as dividend or you will retain it. You're getting my point. Are you able to follow? Right. So now can you give me the earning per share? Now can you give me the earning per share? It is simple. 6 divided by 37.5. Are you able to follow what I am saying? If 6 rupees is 37.5%, what is going to be 100%? Am I clear? It can be any number. I have not calculated the number. Right? So 16 rupees, if we are taking it as earning per share, now you can find out the market price per share because you've got the price earning ratio. You can find out the market price per share. So 7.5 multiplied by 16 will give you the market price per share. Now once you've got you can also find out dividend. That out of 16 rupees, if 6 rupees I am retaining, 10 rupees I am giving as dividend. Isn't it? So once I know the dividend per share, I know the growth rate, and I know the market price per share, I can find out the cost of equity. Is it clear? Can you find out the cost of equity for me? Can you find out the cost of equity for me in this question? Come on, fast. Yeah, I have been able to calculate. Anybody who is trying, are you trying? Okay. Okay, what is the market price per share? If you have tried. What is the market price per share? 120. Perfect. What is the dividend? What is D1 here? No, it is not 10. That's where the catch is. No, it is not 10, dear. It is D1. In order to find out D1, because this is D0. This is the current years. So in order to find out D1, you have to multiply 10 with 1.08. So the next year's dividend would be 10.8, not 10 rupees. Is it clear? Right? Because you don't have to find out D0, you have to find out D1. Now it is very clear, 10.8 divided by 120 plus 0.08 will give you the cost of equity. Now the question goes further. If the anticipated growth rate is 10% per annum, computed the indicated market price with the same cost of capital. Now the question is further. You have got the cost of capital, which came in the last question as what? Cost of equity capital. Was 17%. Okay, it was 17%. Now we go further. If the anticipated growth rate is 10% per annum, compute the indicated market price with the same cost of capital. Now you've got the D1. That is 10.8. You've got the cost of equity as 17%. And you've got the growth rate. No, the growth rate will not be D1 would not be 10.8 here. It would become 11%. It would become 11 rupees here because your growth rate has been increased to 10% per annum. Right? So in case the growth rate increases by 1 more percent, by 10, it increases to 10%, in that situation your D1 will become 11. right? You've got the cost of equity, which is 17%, and the growth rate is here. Simply by interchanging the numbers, your P0 would be equal to D1 divided by KE minus G. Right? Any questions? Any questions, anybody? If the company's cost of capital is 15% and anticipated growth rate is 11%, KE minus G is cross multiplication only. See, if we use the same formula, I said KE is equals to D1 divided by P0 plus G, right? So I interchange it. So KE minus G is equals to D1 divided by P0. So that means P0 is equals to D1 divided by KE minus G. Got it, Ruchika? Right? So it's the same, just cross multiplication has happened. So if the cost of capital is 15% and the anticipated growth rate is 11% per annum, compute the market price per share assuming other conditions remain the same. I don't think so we need to do it again because we've already done a similar kind of a question. Now one more question, and I think it would be the last question for today. Three companies, X Limited, Y Limited and Z Limited, are in the same type of business and hence having similar operating risk. However, the capital structure of each of them is different, and which is as follows. In the first company, you've got equity shares, share capital of rupees 4 lakhs. In the second case, 2,50,000. In the third case, 5 lakh rupees. But in all cases, the face value is rupees 10 per share. Market price per share is 15, 20 and 12. Dividend per share is 2.74 and 2.88. Debentures face value is rupees 100. And you've got the debentures of 0 in X Limited, 1 lakh in Y Limited and 2,50,000 in Z Limited. Market value of debenture has also been given to you. Interest rate on debenture has also been given to you. Assume that the current level of dividend is expected to continue indefinitely and the income tax rate is 30%. You are required to compute the weighted average cost of capital at market value of each company. Right? So first of all, we have to find out the cost of capital. We have been given the dividend per share. We have been given, just a second. We have been given the dividend per share and we have been given the market value per share, but we haven't been given the growth rate. Right? So if the growth rate is not there with us, we simply divide the dividend per share with the market value per share to find out the cost of equity. As we did in the earlier question as well. Dividend per share divided by market value per share will give me the cost of equity. So 2.7 divided by 15 will give me the cost of equity. And in order to find out cost of debt, I simply multiply the interest rate with 1 minus tax rate. And so there are only two things which are given to me. So I can find out for X Limited, Y Limited and Z Limited. Now I have to find out the market value weights. In order to find out the market value weights, I have to multiply the number of shares with the market price per share. Right? So market value per share for X Limited is rupees 15 and it has got 40,000 shares. So 40,000 multiplied by 15 is equals to rupees 6 lakhs. In the second case, they've got two elements in the capital structure. One is equity and second is debt. 25,000 shares and market value per share is 20 rupees. So that makes it 5 lakh rupees is the market value of shares. And debentures, they've got 1,000 debentures and the market price per debenture is rupees 125. So 1,25,000 is the market value of debentures. So total market value is 6,25,000. In the third case, again, we can find out. And now we have to give the weights based upon the market values. So 5 lakhs divided by 625 and 125 divided by 625 will give you the weights here, right? So in order to find out the market value weights, you have to first find out the market value of shares and debentures and then multiply the cost of equity and the cost of debt, right? So simple formulas, not much of difficulty and lot to do in these kinds of questions. Okay, one last question based upon the CAPM, because how can I leave it? Here you have to simply find out the weighted average cost of capital when you have been given the CAPM values for the purpose of calculating the cost of equity. While finding out the cost of equity, you have to decide based upon the information available as to which particular formula you have to use. Krishna Limited is currently financed with rupees 10 lakhs, 7% bonds, 20 lakhs of common stock. The stock has got a beta of 1.5, risk-free rate of 4% and market risk premium of 3.5%. The marginal tax rate of the company is 35%. Compute the weighted average cost of capital. Now, you have been given certain factors of CAPM. So, use CAPM to find out the cost of equity here. The risk-free rate is 4% plus beta is 1.5 multiplied by the market risk premium itself is given to you. So, the market return is not given to you. You have been given the difference between the risk-free rate and the market rate. That is 3.5%. Right? So, in order to find out cost of equity here, simply write 4% plus 1.5 multiplied by 3.5%. Right? So, 4% plus 1.5 multiplied by 3.5%. So, cost of equity would be 9.25%. Cost of debt is not a problem. 7% bonds, right, of rupees 1 lakh and the rate of tax is 35%. So, 7 multiplied by 1 minus 0.35 is equals to 4.55. Now, simply multiply the costs with the weights to find out the weighted average cost of capital. Right? So, with this, I think I finish off with cost of capital. Any questions, any doubts, anybody, please let me know. Any questions? There would be some more questions in the PPTs you can follow. You can marginal cost of capital. See, marginal cost is if I increase one more unit of capital, how my cost is going to increase. That means if my current cost of equity is 10% and if I raise more equity, then will my cost of capital increase? Supposing my new cost of capital becomes 11%. So, marginal cost of capital would be 1%. The difference between the earlier cost and the difference between the new cost. That's called the marginal cost of capital. Anything else? So no questions, so we close the discussion for today. We end up with cost of capital. You can do some homework here. In the last examination, that is December 15 examination, there were certain questions on cost of capital. Try to do those questions and send it to me as homework. There were simple questions and there were complicated questions also. I think in all, if you look at December 15 question paper, new syllabus and old syllabus, it would be around 3 to 4 questions on cost of capital. So please try to solve those questions and send me your solutions so that I understand whether you have understood the concept or not. So with this, we close the discussion for today. Thank you so very much and good night to all of you. Take care of yourselves and keep studying.